Okay, so let's jump into creating a new formula. And so we're going to create a new, let's say, dark chocolate formula using the Ecuadorian nib that we set up in the raw material overview. So I'm going to click New Formula from our development screen, and it's going to open up our next iterative project number. And we'll tell it who's making this formula. It already knows the date, and we're going to say, let's make a 56% Ecuadorian dark chocolate. It's going to default to 10, a batch size of 10. Now, this is pounds, but again, if we change in our settings screen from imperial to metric units, this would then output everything in kilograms. And this is a free-form project description field. It's expandable. You can make it as big or as little as you need. But really think of this as a notepad for you to store whatever notes you believe are relevant for your particular project. It may be order of addition or notes to a technician or notes to yourself or feedback on this project. Let's say you create the formula and you produce a sample of it and people taste it and you want to capture the tasting notes. All that can go into here. It's whatever you deem is appropriate to put into here. And I should say, before I get too much further, there's going to be a couple sections of this that are going to be too meaty for me to take as an introduction of one video. And so the regulatory manager, the production kit, the refining kit manager down here, these are all going to be large enough to warrant their own introduction videos. And so I'm going to gloss over those. While I may reference them, I'm not going to go into detail on them here because I think we're going to dedicate that to its own 5-minute video. And so test project for illustration purposes. And then we're going to start to add our ingredients. And so we're going to start by clicking add, and then we'll immediately be presented with a scrollable list of everything that is in our raw material section that we've already configured. Now we can either scroll through it, which works really, really well if you don't have a lot of ingredients, or in the case of me in my master file, I've got hundreds of raw materials set up. And so scrolling takes all day if I'm looking for one specific thing. If I don't want to scroll all day, I can click in the search box and then just start typing what I'm looking for, and it'll bring that up. And so this is the Ecuadorian nib that we just set up. I'm going to click that, and then immediately you can see that something that says regulatory engine appears up here, and it's red. We're going to go into that in detail in another video, but watch this because this is going to change from red to green as we build something that is a legally compliant chocolate. So we know we need to have some sugar. We know we need to have some cocoa butter. And why don't we go ahead and add some vanilla? And so I didn't take the time to create my formula ahead of time. So you're going to watch me. It may take a time or two for the numbers to work out here, but why don't we start with, let's say, sugar at 44%. We'll say our nibs are going to be another 40%. And oh, the color just turned to green up there. Let's make our vanilla 1%. Oh no, I put cocoa powder here. Actually, so this is going to be a good example. I chose the wrong ingredient here. I meant to put cocoa butter there, and I actually selected cocoa powder. What do? So if I go over here, there's a little trash can item. I'm just going to delete that and get rid of that. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to add the cocoa butter that I should have added in the first place. Okay. So I've got my nibs, I've got my sugar, I've got some flavor, and I'm 15 short of 100. We always need this to add up to 100 in a formula. And so if I add 15, we're at 100. Our costs have all populated, right? And so we can see that in this formula, if I click on Ecuadorian nibs, let's do this because we just set this one up in a previous video. It's going to bring up a summary of what is in our raw material screen that we set up. And so I'm looking specifically for the pricing information. So my Ecuadorian nibs, we set that up at $8.34 a pound. So at $8.34 a pound, at 40% of our formula, that's causing a 73, or that's driving a 73.7% of our cost structure in this formula. Our total formulation costs are about $4.50, of which $3.33 are generated by our Ecuadorian nibs using the costs I've got in these example raw materials. So it's just a really helpful way that as you start going through your development to be able to understand the cost of your choices and what's driving the cost structure of any given formula. Even though your vanilla might be really, really expensive, it's only driving, again, in this example formula, it's only driving single digit percentages of your cost structure. Really, really helpful in helping to manage margins as we get into some more sophisticated margin modeling. So right now, let me just do the math here in my head. We've got 40% nibs and 15% cocoa butter, and I said I wanted to make a 56% chocolate. I'm off by 1%, right? So I've got 40 plus 15 is only 45. I'm going to add 1 to my cocoa nibs and take 1 away from my, which doesn't help me at all. I'm still at 55%. So let me put this back to 15%. And I'm going to take 1% out of my sugar. So 41 plus 15 is going to give me 46%. I've got my cost structure populating. I'm at 100% of cost, and I've got a total fat of 37%. If I wanted to see my full nutritional profile, this is showing me the 6 things that I most commonly refer to as I'm developing a product. But if I want to see everything, I can click this blue button and it expands it to show me all kinds of stuff. I can't for the life of me remember the last time I needed to know what my vitamin A content was in chocolate. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that again, but it's there if I want to see it. If I scroll down, we've got some choices we can make between our refining method. We're going to come back to that in a later video because that's bulky enough that we're going to take that on its own. If I auto-generate my ingredient statement, if I click this button, it's going to create an FDA compliant label statement. And then this section down here is what I use if I'm using, if I want to specify in some quality parameters. And so normally I will begin with the end in mind, right? When I start a formula, I may know that I want it to be, say, 20 microns. And so this column is what am I hoping to get? This column is then what did I actually get? So before I create my formula, or as I'm creating my formula, I'll tell it what I'm hoping to get. Then I assemble my formula, I run a batch of it, and this is what I actually got. Let's say that I was hoping for 20 microns, but I actually got 22 microns. And I'm okay with that, right? I say I chose to go with that instead of remaking a batch. Then what this column is going to do is say, if I'm supplying somebody, right? If I'm making couverture for a hotel chain, or if I'm supplying another factory that is turning it into their finished good and they want a specification sheet from me, this then is where I need to populate my results to generate a spec sheet. And so I may go 22 plus or minus 2 microns on this for my spec results. How this thing gets used is if I go up here to my spec or my nutritional sheets, I can click this button. It's going to instantly generate a spec sheet that it's going to try to print because most of the time I want to print it. I'm going to dismiss that print dialog, and we'll see that this information here that we set up in our settings video is now showing up here. So whatever we call it in our settings video shows up here. It pulls our product name from what we called it on this formula sheet, and then it pre-populates whatever physiochemical attributes we configured in our settings panel. Anything that we left blank in this column here is going to show up as TBD, right? It's telling us that because I left that in my settings panel, because I told the computer that I want viscosity, fat, and color, those things are showing up here. If I deselected those in my settings, those would be absent. But because I told them I wanted them there, they're here. And because I left those fields blank, they're saying I haven't figured out or haven't landed what my viscosity target is yet. Here, because I did tell it what my particle size range should be, right? We got a target and we have a range that is now pulling into our spec sheet. It's pulling in our ingredient statement from the one we automatically created, and it's pulling in our microbiological parameters that we set in our settings as well. So it will do the same thing for nutritional sheets as well. If I pull up my nutritional sheet, it's going to try to print it. I'll dismiss that. And then we can see what our nutrition facts panel is per 100 grams, again, using whatever name we entered into our settings sheet. Final thing I'm going to show you here is just like with our raw materials, we can add attachments. And so if I've got customer feedback, maybe there's an email that came back and had sensory notes that I want to attach to this formula. Maybe I've taken some pictures, maybe I've got some equipment readings, whatever it is. Anything that I deem is a relevant attachment that I don't want to lose with regards to the history of this project, I can attach it right here.